absolute misery. The Duke of Sussex became emotional in court overnight, where he was giving evidence on day 3 of his claim against the publishers of the Daily Mail, who deny any wrongdoing. Rhiannon Mills reports.
The morning Prince Harry finally stepped into the courtroom was supposed to crackle with purpose, the kind of historic electricity that signals a man taking a stand at last. Instead, it felt like the air had been quietly let out of the room, leaving behind a slow, awkward implosion that no amount of royal pedigree could disguise. This was not a conquering prince marching towards justice. This was a visibly shaken man, blinking too often, shoulders slumped, carrying the unmistakable weight of someone who had underestimated the moment entirely. And as the cameras clicked and pens hovered, one uncomfortable truth began to whisper through the room. This was never going to go the way he thought it would. If you're watching this on Royal Scope, take a second to like, share, and subscribe, because what unfolded next was far more revealing than any headline could capture. From the very first exchange, Harry appeared off balance, like an actor who had walked onto the wrong stage and only realized once the spotlight hit his face. Observers noted the exhaustion clinging to him, the rumored lack of sleep etched into his expression, the brittle fragility that comes when preparation meets panic. His eyes welled more than once, tears forming with a sincerity that no one could easily dismiss. But sincerity alone does not equal relevance, and the courtroom is an unforgiving place for emotion without evidence. The question hanging heavily in the air was not whether he was upset, but why. This case concerned alleged unlawful information gathering from 15 to 20 years ago, a period frozen in time long before Meghan Markle ever entered his world. Yet, as if on reflex, Meghan was pulled once again into the emotional center of the narrative, positioned almost as a talisman against discomfort, a familiar shield whenever Harry feels exposed. It was here that the confusion began to curdle into something more troubling. What exactly were those tears about? Some believe the timing itself rattled him, that Anella's tactical decision to shorten opening arguments dragged Harry into the witness box a full day earlier than planned. If Wednesday was meant to be a final day of preparation, a calm before the storm, it clearly evaporated under pressure. Others suggest the emotional toll of revisiting his past finally caught up with him, memories colliding with the present in a way he could no longer compartmentalize. But there is another possibility, quieter and more unsettling, that the tears marked a dawning realization that the life he once had, his family, his status, his sense of belonging, is not just distant but permanently unreachable. As proceedings dragged on, Harry's discomfort hardened into defiance. He repeatedly argued with the judge, to the point where he reportedly had to be reminded that he was not the lawyer. It was a moment that spoke volumes without raising its voice. This was not the behavior of a composed claimant confident in his case. It was the behavior of someone who fundamentally did not understand where he was or how this world operates. Titles mean nothing here. Feelings do not bend procedure. And yet, Harry seemed genuinely shocked that his personal narrative did not automatically command authority. Watching this unfold felt like witnessing a man collide with a reality that refuses to recognize him as special. At the core of the problem lies a misunderstanding so basic it undermines everything else. Harry appears incapable, or unwilling, to grasp the central premise of his own case. The court is not interested in how he feels, how Meghan feels, or how hurtful certain headlines may have been. The only question that matters is whether information was obtained illegally. That is it. No poetic license, no emotional appeals, no tragic backstory can replace proof. His testimony, repeatedly drifting into grievance and perception, came across not just as weak, but intellectually hollow, as though he were arguing a completely different case to the one actually being tried. The press, inconveniently for Harry, is allowed to report on him stumbling out of nightclubs. They are allowed to discuss his privilege, his family connections, and even invoke the memory of Diana. Tasteless at times, perhaps hurtful, undeniably uncomfortable, but illegal? No. Emotional discomfort does not magically transform lawful reporting into criminal conduct, no matter how passionately Harry insists otherwise. The law does not operate on vibes or trauma. It operates on facts. And facts were precisely what seemed in short supply. As the hours wore on, Harry retreated into familiar comfort narratives, repeating lines that had become almost reflexive. My family caused this. My mother died when I was young. My wife was hurt by the press. These themes have played powerfully in interviews, documentaries, and carefully edited specials, where sympathy is the currency and context is controlled. But in open court, stripped of dramatic music and selective framing, they sounded increasingly like deflection. Each emotional turn felt less like clarification and more like avoidance, as though circling pain might somehow substitute for answering the question actually being asked. Beneath the tears, many observers sensed something else entirely. Fear. Fear of losing the case and what that loss would symbolize. Fear of the financial implications, the reputational blow, the inevitable headlines that would follow. Fear of how such a defeat might ripple into his marriage, already burdened by scrutiny and speculation. Fear of future reviews not going his way, of doors quietly closing rather than dramatically slamming. Rumors of strain back home, of late-night phone calls and emotional pressure, only add to the picture of a man running on fumes. Whether fair or not, Harry looked propped up by self-pity and resentment, rather than clarity and conviction. What those tears likely represented was not grief over press intrusion, but grief for the life he dismantled piece by piece. He mourns the father and brother who once adored him, the sister-in-law who treated him like a beloved younger sibling, the ease and protection of a world he now publicly condemns yet privately longs for. That old life is gone, not stolen by tabloids, but burned down through choice after choice. And now, standing in a courtroom that does not care about his pain, he is beginning to feel the heat of those decisions. Harry still seems to believe, on some level, that being a prince means reality should adjust to him. That his version of events must be accepted because of who he is. That courts, like public opinion, should bend under emotional pressure. But this is not the court of public sympathy. It is a court of law, and the law does not flinch. Watching him grapple with that truth was uncomfortable, almost tragic, because it revealed a man unprepared not just legally, but psychologically, for the consequences of his own narrative. By the end of the day, Harry had done more than expose weaknesses in his case. He exposed himself. Confused, entitled, emotionally reactive, and fundamentally out of his depth, he stood before the court as someone who mistook storytelling for strategy and feeling for fact. The image of a prince seeking justice gave way to that of a man confronting the ruins of his own making. If you've stayed with Royal Scope this far, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this story is far from over. But one thing is already clear. In that courtroom, Harry did not find vindication. He found a mirror, and the reflection staring back was not the one he expected.